Marina's disappointment had grown heavier in Lagos, a mix of heartbreak and bitterness. She tried to remind herself of Bolin's warmth and sincerity, but with no word from him, doubts continued to creep in. Late one evening, the doorbell rang, breaking her from her thoughts. She hurried to the door, her heart racing. Standing on the doorstep was Ming, his expression somber but calm. "You're not Bolin," she said, her disappointment evident. Ming stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "But I'm here on his behalf." Marina crossed her arms, trying to mask her emotions. "Why isn't he here?" Ming hesitated before speaking. "Marina, there's something you need to know. Bolin hasn't abandoned you. He's fighting. For you. For both of you." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ming's gaze flickered to her abdomen, and at that moment, Marina realized he had noticed what she had yet to share. "You're expecting," he said softly. Marina's hand instinctively rested on her stomach, and tears welled in her eyes. "I was going to tell him," she whispered. "I thought he'd be here by now." Ming stepped closer, his voice steady but kind. "He doesn't know, and it's better that way for now. The shadow circle is hunting him. If they find out about you and the pregnancy, they won't stop until you're both destroyed." "Who are they?" Marina asked, her voice trembling. "The people hunting Bolin, the ones who forced him back to China. Tell me the truth, Ming. I need to know." Ming sighed, leaning forward, his elbows resting on the table. "The shadow circle," he began, "is a syndicate unlike anything you can imagine. They're not just criminals, they're manipulators, power brokers who control empires from behind the scenes. Bolin's family stood in their way." Marina's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "Years ago," Ming continued, "when Bolin's parents built their empire, they refused to bow to the shadow circle. Chaoxiang, Bolin's father, was a man of integrity. He wouldn't allow his legacy to be tainted by their corruption. That made him an enemy." Marina leaned back, her mind racing. "Bolin never mentioned any of this." "Because he didn't know," Ming said quietly. "For most of his life, Bolin believed Chaoxiang was his uncle. It was only after he returned to China that he discovered the truth." Ming's voice grew heavier as he revealed the devastating truth. Chaoxiang was Bolin's biological father. He kept the secret to protect him. Bolin's mother was killed by the shadow circle when he was just a child. After that, Chaoxiang took on the role of uncle, raising Bolin in secrecy to shield him from their enemies. Marina's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "And Bolin just found this out?" Ming nodded. "When Bolin was summoned back to China, it wasn't just to reclaim the empire. It was to prepare him for the truth. But before they could fully reunite, the shadow circle struck again. Chaoxiang. He died protecting Bolin." The words hung in the air like a lead weight. Marina's breath caught in her throat. "His father, his real father, is gone?" Ming's voice softened. "Yes, and Bolin is devastated. First his mother, now his father. Both of them gave their lives to protect him. And now, he's left to carry the weight of their legacy." Marina's hands trembled as she tried to process the magnitude of Ming's words. "So why isn't he here? Why hasn't he come to see me?" "Because it's too dangerous," Ming said firmly. "The shadow circle knows about Bolin, but they don't know about you and the pregnancy. If Bolin came here, he'd lead them straight to you. And if they find out about the baby, Marina, they won't stop until they've destroyed everything he loves." Marina's voice cracked. "So what am I supposed to do? Just wait? Raise our son without him?" Ming placed a reassuring hand on hers. "I'll do everything I can to keep you safe. I'll visit whenever possible, and I'll make sure Bolin knows you're alive and well. But I won't tell him about the baby, not yet. If he knows, he'll stop at nothing to come here, and that will put all of you at risk." Marina stood frozen, her mind racing. The joy she had felt earlier, imagining Bolin's reaction, crumbled under the weight of Ming's words. "So what am I supposed to do? Just stay here and wait?" "Staying here isn't weakness," Ming replied. "It's strength. You'll be protecting the most important part of Bolin's future. That's something only you can do." Marina fought back tears, her voice trembling. "He's risking his life, and you want me to sit here and do nothing?" Ming's expression softened. "Marina, Bolin is risking his life because of how much he loves you. Keeping you and the baby safe is the greatest priority. Trust him. Trust me." The next morning, Ming boarded a plane back to China, leaving Marina to grapple with her new reality. As the plane ascended, Ming leaned back in his seat, his mind heavy with the knowledge he carried. He knew Bolin would never forgive him if he found out that Marina was carrying his child and had kept it from him. But Ming also knew that if Bolin discovered the truth, nothing, not reason, not fear, would stop him from rushing to Lagos, endangering them all. When Ming arrived in China, Bolin was waiting. "How is she?" he asked urgently. "She's safe," Ming replied, keeping his voice calm and even. "She's waiting for you." Bolin exhaled, relief washing over him. "I need to see her." "Not yet," Ming said firmly. "The shadow circle is still watching. If you leave now, you'll lead them straight to her." Bolin's frustration was evident, but he trusted Ming. He had to. What he didn't know was the secret Ming carried. The truth about the child that would one day inherit everything Bolin was fighting for. For Ming, the lie was a necessary burden. Keeping Marina and the baby safe was all that mattered. And if that meant hiding the truth from Bolin, it was a price he was willing to pay. For Marina, the first few weeks after Bolin's departure were the hardest. Every sound at the door made her heart leap. Every message on her phone sent a surge of hope through her veins. But as weeks turned into months, that hope became quieter, more cautious. She began to understand that her life was no longer the same, that waiting for Bolin meant adapting to an entirely new reality. Her growing belly became both a source of joy and a stark reminder of his absence. The excitement she once felt imagining Bolin's return and their reunion had begun to dull, replaced by the cold truth that he might never come back. Still, she refused to give in to despair. Bolin's words, though distant, still echoed in her mind. "I'll be back soon." Ming's visits were Marina's only connection to Bolin, the only proof that he was still out there. Each time he arrived, he carried the same quiet confidence, though the dark circles under his eyes and the tension in his jaw betrayed the truth. "He's alive," Ming would always say when Marina pressed him for updates. "He's fighting for what belongs to him." Those words became a mantra for Marina, a lifeline she clung to in her loneliest moments. She spent her days preparing for the baby's arrival, decorating the nursery, and organizing the small apartment as best she could. At night, she wrote letters to Bolin. They were filled with words of encouragement, updates on the pregnancy, and her dreams of the family they would one day be. She never expected him to read them, but it was her way of keeping him close, of holding on to the hope that their love was strong enough to endure the distance. During one visit, Ming seemed more distracted than usual. He spoke little, his eyes darting toward the windows as if he expected trouble at any moment. "Ming, what's wrong?" Marina asked, setting down the tea she'd prepared. "You're quieter than usual." Ming hesitated before replying. "I won't be able to visit for the next few months," he said carefully. "Things in China have escalated. I need to stay close to Bolin." Marina's heart sank. Ming's visits had become her anchor in Bolin's absence, and now even that was slipping away. But what if something happens? What if the baby comes early? Ming's gaze softened. I'll be back before the baby arrives. I promise." Before leaving, Ming handed her an envelope. "This is for you," he said. "Inside, you'll find details for a secret bank account. I've been transferring money into it. It's not much, but it should help you with anything you need." Marina looked at the envelope, her throat tightening with emotion. "Thank you," she whispered. "Take care of yourself, Marina," Ming said, his tone unusually gentle. "And take care of the baby. Bolin's fighting for you both." Back in China, Bolin and Ming were working tirelessly to uncover the Shadow Circle's schemes. The deeper they dug, the more devastating the truth became. 95% of the vast empire had been systematically bought out or infiltrated by their enemies. Every ally Bolin thought he had was either compromised or neutralized. One night, while infiltrating a corporate office tied to the Shadow Circle, Bolin and Ming narrowly escaped an ambush. Hidden cameras had caught their movements, and within minutes, the building was swarming with armed operatives. Ming dragged Bolin through a maze of dark corridors, their breaths heavy as gunfire echoed in the distance. "We can't keep doing this," Ming muttered as they crouched behind a storage crate. "They're too far ahead." "We have to," Bolin replied, his voice steely. "This is all I have left." Ming didn't respond. He couldn't. His mind was on Marina, alone in Lagos, about to give birth to Bolin's child. He had promised to be there, but now it was impossible. The risk was too great. In Lagos, Marina labored alone in a small hospital room. The midwife's calming words did little to ease the ache in her heart. She had imagined Bolin by her side, holding her hand, whispering words of encouragement. But now, as she bore the pain of bringing their child into the world, she felt his absence more acutely than ever. After hours of grueling labor, the cries of a newborn filled the room. Marina's tears flowed freely as the midwife placed her son in her arms. "He's perfect," the midwife said with a smile. Marina gazed at her baby, her heart swelling with a mix of love and sorrow. "Hao Chow," she whispered. "That's your name. You're so much like your father." Holding him close, she made a silent promise. "I'll keep you safe until he can hold you himself." In China, Ming's worry for Marina grew with each passing day. He had lied to her, promising to be there for the birth, and now the guilt gnawed at him. Bolin noticed his unease. "What's wrong, Ming?" Bolin asked one evening, his tone sharp. "You've been distracted all day." "It's nothing," Ming replied quickly, too quickly. Bolin's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me." Ming took a steadying breath, masking his turmoil. "I'm worried about how deeply the Shadow Circle has infiltrated us. That's all." It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Ming had decided that telling Bolin about the baby would be too dangerous. He knew Bolin well enough to predict his reaction. He would drop everything and rush to Lagos, putting not only his own life in jeopardy, but also Marina and the babies. For Ming, keeping them safe meant keeping the truth from Bolin. The stakes were higher than ever, and every decision weighed heavily on his conscience. This fight isn't just about reclaiming the empire, Ming thought to himself. It's about ensuring Bolin has something to return to, a family, a legacy. And if that means keeping the secret a little longer, then so be it. The small, dimly lit hideout smelled of damp concrete and cigarette smoke. Papers were strewn across the table, covered in diagrams, names, and maps of the vast empire Bolin had once believed was his to inherit. Now it felt like a noose tightening around his neck. Ming stood across from him, his face illuminated by the bluish glow of a laptop screen, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. "Look at this," Ming said, spinning the laptop around to face Bolin. "Another one." Bolin leaned in, his jaw tightening as he scanned the data. It was the name of yet another high-ranking official, someone Bolin had trusted, now confirmed to be on the Shadow Circle's payroll. It wasn't the first name on the list, and it wouldn't be the last. How many does that make? Bolin asked, his voice low and measured, masking the frustration bubbling beneath. Ming exhaled sharply, rubbing the bridge of his nose. 95% of the shares. 95% of your empire is now in the hands of people loyal to Jiwan. Bolin slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing through the small room. How did this happen? How did they get this far without anyone noticing? They didn't just buy shares, Bolin, Ming replied, his tone grim. They bought people. Managers, directors, even janitors in your headquarters. They're everywhere. The Shadow Circle didn't just infiltrate your empire. They own it. Ming pulled out a stack of documents, spreading them across the table. Each one was a dossier on a key figure in the empire. Names Bolin recognized, faces he had seen in boardrooms and at family gatherings. Look at this, Ming said, pointing to a picture of a man in his late 50s. Lin Gao. He was one of your father's closest allies. We thought he was still loyal, but he's been funneling information to Jiwan for years. Bolin stared at the photo, the weight of betrayal pressing down on his chest. Gao was at my father's funeral. He held my hand and told me he'd always protect the family. Ming gave a bitter laugh. Guess that loyalty has a price tag. And this one? Bolin asked, pointing to another dossier. It was a woman in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and impeccably dressed. Li Mei, Ming said. She's the head of your legal team. Or was. She's the one who quietly altered contracts to transfer shares to Shadow Circle proxies. Bolin shook his head in disbelief. Every time I thought we had a foothold, they were already 10 steps ahead. As the night wore on, Ming and Bolin pored over every detail, every connection. By dawn, a grim reality had settled over them. Any direct attempt to reclaim the empire would be suicidal. If we try to go after them head on, Ming said, running a hand through his hair, we'll be dead or in prison before we can even make a dent. Bolin sat back in his chair, his fists clenched tightly. So what do we do? Let them win? Let them destroy everything my parents built? Ming's gaze hardened. But we have to be smarter than them. Jiwan and the Shadow Circle are playing chess, Bolin. If we come at them with a hammer, we'll lose. We need to outthink them, outmaneuver them. And how do we do that? Bolin asked, his voice filled with equal parts anger and desperation. Ming hesitated, his expression unreadable. Then, with quiet determination, he said, We play their game from the inside. What do you mean, from the inside? Bolin asked, his brow furrowing. Ming leaned forward, lowering his voice as if the walls themselves might betray them. Jiwan is too powerful to take down from the outside, but he has a weakness, his daughter, Wei Lian. She's his Achilles heel. Bolin's stomach tightened. He had heard of Wei Lian, brilliant, calculating, and fiercely loyal to her father. You're not suggesting what I think you are. It's the only way, Ming said firmly. If you marry her, Jiwan will see it as a way to neutralize you. He won't see you as a threat anymore. It'll give us time to work from within, gather allies, and take back what's yours. You're asking me to marry the daughter of the man who destroyed my family, Bolin said, his voice trembling with controlled rage. I'm asking you to survive, Ming shot back. If we don't do this, you won't just lose the empire. You'll lose everything. Your legacy, your future, Marina. At the mention of Marina, Bolin froze. He thought of her in Lagos, waiting for him. The thought of betraying her trust, even for a plan this desperate, made his chest ache. There has to be another way, Bolin said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ming placed a hand on his shoulder. I know what I'm asking of you, Bolin. But this is the only way to stay alive to fight back. Think of Marina. Think of your future with her. This isn't just about you anymore.